Here we are then, the last 7 Ks. We're going into the finish today at Burgos. They've just run under the banner, and it's an alliance of the Belgians and the Germans at the front at the moment. Quickstep and De Witteman, and Rolf is the T-Mobile rider, just being constantly pushed on, literally, by Fassa Bortolo, who do not want to come to the front and do the work yet for Alessandro Petacchi. They're all sitting there waiting, and I think it was Fabio Baldato who's the first guy in the Fassa line. But as soon as one of the riders at the front dropped off, having done his pull, Fabio Baldato would just a little hand on the back of Rolf Aldager, wherever it was, and just push them up the front again. They do not want to do any more work than they have to, Sean.
No, well, they do not. We've seen that over a number of days where they seem to ride to a moment, and then they get to distance from the finish, and there's other teams who come up to the front of the bunch and start walking, and they seem to be able to work out that they can leave those riders amazingly do the front pulling, and we see there the T-Mobile and Quickstep doing it now for a little while, and they're just waiting there in the shadow, and they just appear like a number of kilometres out, 4 or 5 kilometres from the finish, and the Fassa riders then just in block. They go to the front and they just up the speed, and that's what Petacchi need, a lead out like that, and if he's taking that position to the last 150, 200 metres before the line, well, then he's impossible to beat.
Well, that's a good view, isn't it, from up there? The race passes. Most people who stand on the side of the road see the race caravan coming past, and it flashes past, especially at 55 k an hour, which they're travelling at the moment. Not bad being up in a crane and watching that. Well, we are rapidly approaching the last 5 kilometres of today's run into Burgos. You can see from the back of the motorcycle, it looks like a good run in. Looks like a nice tarmac surface, but to be honest, it's not quite as smooth as it looks. Being jostled around, the cameraman on the back there. 5 kilometres to go then, still T-Mobile doing all the work on the front. Where is Eric Zabel hiding? He'll be in there somewhere, and CSC at the front as well. Sean, just keeping Sastre out of trouble, or just trying to tee somebody up for a bit of a go today?
Well, I think the first thing would be maybe to keep Sastre up out of danger, keep him in the top 20, and he's not a rider who really be love this sort of stage finish, because a lot of movement in the front of the bunch when we get to the last number of kilometres, and a little split in the group, and you can lose a number of seconds very quickly. So I think it's just for I would say it's for Sastre, because in the CSC they don't really have a big sprinter anymore, so I don't see any other reason for them to be up the front.
Yeah, Giovanni Lombardi would have been their big would have been a big sprint name in the past, of course, lead out man for Mario Cipollini, but really has foregone that role for CSC. Lombardi fancies his chances today. They're certainly driving along on the front. There's no doubt about that. Liquigas also coming towards the front. Marco Zanotti, their designated sprinter, but they've got a couple of guys who could stick a good sprint in if needed. Even big Magnus Backstedt, if he's feeling good after his day off, might give it a go today. Only lost one rider so far, Liquigas, Oscar Masson, the Italian. He went about 4 or 5 days ago now. It's all beginning to break up a little bit. The pace being set on the front by a number of teams now, and De Witteman Lotto have got on the front once again, trying to set something up for Tom Steels, and Fassa Bortolo going on the left-hand side of your screen, the left-hand side of the road here, right-hand side of the screen, with 3 kilometres to go. Now they run alongside the river, and it's a 500-metre run in, or just thereabouts, to the line, and a nasty little right-hand swing, Sean.
Yes, and we see here the speed is not really high, because the group is very much compact, and if it was really going at at a higher rate, they would be pulled out much more. And we see a lot of different riders coming to the front here, as we see some of the Gerolsteiners riders starting to come up here now. But this is the moment where we'll see the Fassa, as we see on the left hand side, they're just starting to take it over now, and they will up the pace, and immediately we'll see the bunch will stretch out quite a lot. But again, the Fassa riders, as we said, they just wait and wait, and 3 kilometres to go, a perfect position for them, because they can really keep the pace very, very high from here right to the finish.
No sign of Tom Bonen near the front yet. No sign of Eric Zabel at the front yet. He will be tucked in there. The Gerolsteiner riders were trying to come alongside Fassa Bortolo with 2 kilometers to go. Heinrich Hausler has been the man in form for them, the young German, Australia-German, I guess you'd say. He's got Australian parentage as well. Rennie Hasselbacher is their designated sprinter, but hasn't really been on form, hasn't been firing on all cylinders here. But Fassa Bortolo still leading out the train. And I think, well, let's have a look at it. It's all very, very messy towards the front. Eric Zabel will be right up there. You can see there's a bit of leaning going on right in the middle. I think that might have been Big Magnus giving somebody a big thump, saying get out the way. There's Tom Bonen, I think, just settling in onto the 4th back at the moment. Alessandro Patacchi is almost right on his shoulder. Then 2 of the Liquigas riders, Backstead and Zanotti, probably. Can't see Tom Steels directly in there. He's got a yellow helmet, remember, on his Divita Monlotto colours. Under the 1 kilometre to go banner, and they've set it up perfectly again, Sean, for Alessandro Patacchi.
Yes, they certainly have. You know, they're in the driving force at the moment. Still a number of the Fassa riders, but quite a mixture of riders up there front. As you see, Liquigas, we see Zabel up there, and also some of the quick-step riders up there in the top 10 or 15. So quite a mixture of teams all the time.
This is this very nasty left-hander. There's a big wide road, but it's look. Whoa! I think Eric Zabel has run very wide. I think that might have been Zabel who's gone too wide. Or is he still in there? No, he's still in there. Tom Bonen coming on the far left-hand side. Jimmy Casper, I think it is behind, but Alessandro Patacchi's in a perfect lead-out position. There is Eric Zabel right behind him. Marco Vela is the last man on the train, as per usual. You could see the young German Heisler from Gerolsteiner right on Tom Bonen's wheel. That's a very good place to be. Here goes Patacchi. Tom Steele's coming up on the far left-hand side. He's really trying, but he hasn't got the power. Eric Zabel right on the wheel of Patacchi. Will he be able to get around him? He won't. No chance at all. And Alessandro Patacchi just driving his way to the line, and Eric Zabel just had to be content with sitting in the wheel tracks. There was no chance of coming around him, Sean. And again, Tom Steels went for it fairly early and just faded at the power of the big Italian rider.
Yes, well, again, Patacchi just so impressive when he just takes off from the front. We see Zabel there in the wheel, and he's just happy to stay in the wheel, and the other riders, you know, nobody really challenging at all.
Well, let's have a look then at the last kilometre. Here we go, they go under the banner, and Sean, already well, in fact, at this point, this is where the Gerolsteiners gave up. They were trying to take their own lead-out train on the left-hand side of our picture as you look overhead, and they just really gave up because they couldn't match the pace of Fassa Bortolo, and everybody had to try and tuck in behind Alessandro Patacchi. Is that the time when they realised that's where they're going to have to be?
Yes, well, of course, you know, the Fassa riders, they know exactly how to, you know, go about the sprint, and they know the running, and they just really turned it up at that time when the other riders were starting to come up on the left-hand side, and just up the pace a bit, and everybody just went a little bit further, went back leading the group from there on.
Tom Bonen a long way back at this point. That is, I'm sure that's Jimmy Casper, the Cofidis sprinter, in there as well, just on the wheel. Marco Zanotti is the Liquigas rider, I'm sure. Eric Zabel and Tom Steels coming out from behind Zabel's wheel and trying very hard, but trying by himself again. Maybe should have stayed there a little bit longer, Sean, do you think?
Well, I think the best thing for Steels to do would be just to stay in the wheel, because we see when he moved out and started taking the wind, he just started going backwards, and the other riders started to come by him. He should have just stayed in the slipstream of Zanotti, for example, as Zabel did, you know, in the wheel of Patacchi, just stayed there and finishing second. It just, you know, proves once again Patacchi, when it's in just a straight-out sprint, there's nobody able to, you know, give him any challenge at all. And Bonen, surprisingly, he was a long ways off. Yeah. He was in about 6th or 7th position there, not the position to be in at all, and surprising that he's, you know, not moving further up and trying to get in the wheel of Patacchi. That's the only way he can challenge Patacchi, but in that position we see here, you know, in about 4th, 5th position, too far off.
Well, you can see Tom Steels on the far right-hand side of the picture has decided to go it alone and just fades. Eric Zabel's in pretty good shape, though. I mean, he's not losing an awful lot of ground to Alessandro Patacchi. In fact, if anything, he's just inching up on him, but yes, still not been in the right place at the right time.
Well, I think it's the right place. I think it's the right place, but when Patacchi goes, we see that he takes almost 2 bike lengths from him, and Patacchi Zabel comes back slowly into the wheel, but, like, you know, it's too late then, and there's no way he's going to get by Patacchi. You know, just when Patacchi really just goes for a sprint, he just pulls out that advantage, and then everybody's just fighting to stay in the wheel from that moment on.
Yeah, he's got a good kick, isn't he? As soon as rubber banks, just a couple of the rubber banks at the front. We saw Illes Balears at the front as well. 3 or 4 riders doing some work trying to drag the peloton along. Interesting. Is that because Sevilla's up the road, Sean? Because although he's a fair way back on Mancebo, is Mancebo using the opportunity to put a little bit of pressure on Roberto Heras, who may be injured, but also try and drag back keep a reasonable gap to Sevilla, who he still sees as a potential threat to certainly his position?
Yes, well, of course, you cannot allow a rider like Sevilla take too much time, because then he, leapfrogs up in the general classement. And of course, we see the Illes Balears riders setting the pace there, and that's just to keep it, would keep it from growing too much. And for Manchego, of course, he doesn't want Sevilla to come up close to him, or maybe go ahead of him if they manage to, pull out quite a big advantage. So they're, they're closing down that, they're riding in the front, and that's the reason, just to keep Sevilla under control.
2 riders in the break, of course, Juan Horach and Pablo Lastras. Now, they did have 3 at one time. Vincenti Garcia Acosta was up there as well, but those riders will be contributing nothing at all, despite the protestations of Oscar Sevilla. But he's been around long enough to know that they're not going to do anything. That's their job, just to sit on his wheel now and see how far Sevilla can pull things along. So Lastras, Horach, Oscar Sevilla, Oscar Pereiro, Maurizio Adilia, all on the front, and Samuel Sanchez, the lone rider from Euskaltel in the break. He's a good rider, Sanchez. We've been talking about him over the last few days. He had a very good season 2 seasons ago. Last year wasn't so good. Well, the end of last year wasn't so good, and the beginning of this year wasn't so good. But we've seen him quite active and helping out, certainly at the beginning of this Vuelta. He's a rider who can turn in a really good performance on certain days, Sean.
Yes, well, I think in this race we've seen him quite a bit in the end of the stages. We've seen him going in the attack, and any time the stages have been a little bit undulating in the final where there's a bit of a hill, he's went in the attack on a number of times, and that tells you, he's feeling good, because to be able to come out of the bunch at that time in the race, you have to be in good shape. And I think, the day is coming, the mountain stages, maybe we'd see him in the break, but certainly today, and the finish today, of course, an uphill finish, it's not a case where you have a flat finish. A rider who can sprint really well, you have a great chance of pulling it off. So in an uphill one, it's more fair. I think everybody get a good shot at it, and especially when it's about 2.5 kilometers an uphill, I think a chance for more people to pull off the stage today.
Yeah, there's a good number of riders who could do that in that group as well. Little Maurizio Adilia, the Colombian rider, really good all-rounder. He's built a bit like a whippet, but he's a strong young lad. Was signed for De Vitamon Lotto at the beginning of the year. Seems to be repaying them quite well. Good rider. Oscar Pereiro coming back into form a little bit, finding his legs towards the middle to end of this Vuelta. Had a particularly poor first half of the Vuelta, involved in a couple of crashes, and in fact had a very, very difficult Tour de France. He worked very, very hard, did very, very well indeed. That takes a lot out of you. So Pereiro may be a strong man for today. Ardilio, a good man. Sanchez, a good man. Pablo Lastras as well has won stages in the Vuelta, both in the high mountains and on this sort of terrain. He's a very good all-rounder, Sean.
Yes, yeah, I think everybody up in this break, it is very difficult to call it who could win the stage if they stay away, and it looks like it. Now they're going to hold on out there, because we see once again the bunch all across the road. The speed has dropped quite a bit, and if they keep on working together up front and don't stop playing about and attacking each other, well, then they should hold on and go on to contest this stage victory.
What about when they actually get up to the top? Because, as we said, it's a pretty nasty climb. Oh, it's one of the Bouygues Telecom. It's Christophe Kern, I think. The Bouygues rider just shot out of the bunch there. He's going to try and make it across, I would think. Well, he's putting in some effort. There's no doubt about that. What about the top of this finish today, Sean? It's a sharp, nasty little climb, but then it flattens out towards the top. There's this sort of gentle right-hand swing in towards the finish. Are we going to see maybe 2, 3, 4 men get away and then start playing cat and mouse and be caught again towards the line by the rest of the breakaway guys?
Well, I think it depends on the break up front, how much the advantage they will have going into the bottom of the climb, because if the bunch reacts and they start coming, closing down on them, well, then they'll have to keep it going up front, because the time advantage is not huge, so they can't have the time to play about that much. And on a short climb like this, I think when when we arrive in the bottom of the climb, I think there'll be riders who will go in the attack, and they will be pulled back and another one go on the attack. So I think it'll be action all the way. There won't be any time where they will really start playing cat and mouse on this final climb.
Well, brave move, strong riding, pushing a big gear. Christoph Kern from Bouygues Telecom. Well, he's working hard, but he looks pretty much done in already, Sean. I think it's been a long Vuelta for a lot of people, but riding hard. Obviously, intention to bridge across to the other guys, but I think that's going to be difficult with 5 or 6 committed riders up the front to get across there by yourself. Could have done with somebody else coming along with him.
No, I don't think it's possible for a rider to bridge this gap, which is, around a minute, a bit more, and Kelvin just goes out of the bunch when it slows down, really. We see everybody across the road, and he just see the occasion, I suppose, to get himself on TV for a moment, and for him to hold on out there even ahead of the bunch. I don't think he will be capable of doing it. Oh,
you're such a cynic, getting yourself on TV for a while. Can't blame him though. Well, it looks, this is the helicopter shot we're getting down to the breakaway riders, and it looks as though it's beginning to split up. The pressure coming on the front. Can't tell you who from. It looks like Oscar Pereiro from, Pereiro and Sevilla, with Ardilia with them, and one of the Illes Balears riders, I think that is Juan Horach, but I'm not sure. Be nice if we could get down there and have a look, but definitely Sevilla. Ardilia, the Colombian. Oscar Pereiro is the Fonac rider, and one of the 2 Illes Balears riders are either Juan Horach or Pablo Lastras. Looks to be the taller of the 2, so I would suggest that maybe Horach, but don't take my word for it. Where are the camera bikes, I wonder? I wonder what's happened to them. I wonder if the cameraman's inadvertently fallen off the back, trying to film tarmac or sky or Armco barrier or something. Well, the rest of the riders involved in that little breakaway really trying to get it all back together. It's certainly not flat on this run up to the finish today, and the pressure really coming on hard from Oscar Pereira at the front. This is the back of, is this a group going across to Christoph Kern? It is. One CSC rider, there's Joaquim Rodriguez at the back there, you can see. And Christoph Kern not staying out there for too long. Andre Perron, I think, was the rider from CSC trying to get across to the front, or has got across to Christoph Kern. And Alberto Ongorato from Fassa Bortolo, I think, was the guy with his shirt flapping around. It's pretty hot again today. It's not as hot as it has been in the first week of the Vuelta, but this is an interesting finish now. Groups coming out from the main peloton. And up at the front, the group of 8 riders now splitting up quite definitively. It looks like Oscar Pereira again putting the pressure on from this helicopter shot. I'd love to tell you why we haven't got a motorcycle shot, but I can't. Ardilia on his wheel. They've just slowed it down again, Sean. All beginning to look over their shoulders already. Pereiro not willing to take up all the work on the front, Sean.
No, certainly not, and we see the 5 leaders there. They're just going sudden acceleration. Somebody tries to attack off the front, and then everybody comes back in his wheel, and they slow down again. As we see it once again here, we see it looks like the Fonac rider there in the front, and being chased by one of the Illes Balears riders, and it's going to be like that, I think, all the way to the finish, because this one, quite a short one, they're going just to battle all the way over the last number of kilometres here.
Well, Pereiro showed such a strong ride in the Tour de France. He doesn't want to have to do all the work at the front, but he's having to do all the work at the front at the moment because nobody's got to help him he kept looking behind, he kept slowing down, saying, somebody else come and do some work with me, I'm not going to do it all. And he's decided, well, they're not going to play ball. If I want to win this one today, it's a nasty, nasty climb up. It's only third category.
Now coming back into his wheel, and as we see the time gap back to the main, the front part of the bunch, a minute, so definitely going to stay out here, and the victories are going to be between those riders up front. We see we have 5 here, but the other riders, I reckon, who are in this group with the rest, I think they're not too far off either.
Good riding by little Mauricio Ardilia, the Colombian. He's latched onto the wheel of Oscar Pereiro. He saw that Pereiro was going to ride away by himself, and he's sprinted across the gap. He's a very talented all-rounder, very talented indeed. And now he and Pereiro are taking up station at the front of this little breakaway group. Down the road are the 2 Illes Balears riders, Lastras and Horach. And then David Latassa was in there. He's been distanced now. Samuel Sanchez from Euskaltel is in there. So 2 of the men that we were talking about, Sean, that could, well, you're saying anybody could contest this one. Well, Ardilia, who's been riding very well in the last couple of days. Pereiro coming back into a bit more form. These 2 up the front by themselves. It's going to take, it's flattened out a little bit now. It's going to take some real effort to get back to these 2 now. They're riding well.
Yes, well, Pereira is the one who is doing all the riding. We see Ardia here, he's not taking all the pace, setting the pulling on the front at all. And if Pereira doesn't keep working at 100%, well then other riders will come back. As we see there are a number of riders coming back, and there's a rider there about 50-60 metres behind those 2 leaders.
Canny riding by Ardilia. He knows that Pereiro is a strong guy. Well, Pereiro, to be fair, he made the decision to go for it by himself. Ardilia's come up to him. I think he had a quick word with him when he came up. Ardilia probably not wanting to contribute at all, forcing Pereiro to do the work. He's come to the front now and really put a little bit of pressure on as well. And Pereiro looks like he's beginning to suffer a little bit in the wheel of Ardilia. Is Ardilia going to wait for him? I don't think he is. Oh, he is. He's just slowing down again. Oh, it really is quite an interesting one with these 2. Pereiro, I don't think he's going to want to hang around, Sean. He's going to have to do what he wants. And Samuel Sanchez has bridged over the gap. He's almost coming up on them. Ardilia got to the front and then decided he wanted Pereiro to do the run out today, Sean. He's the strong man, and it's all slowing down. Maybe there is going to be a bit of cat and mouse today, and Sanchez is going to catch them at this rate. Yes,
well, of course, so we see Ardia, he's not riding at all. When he went to the front, he attacked Pereiro, and then when Pereiro came back on his wheel again, he just, sat up and still sitting in the wheel of Pereiro, as we see Sanchez coming back to join him. So with 3 up front at the moment, and 500 metres, so it's going to be between those 3 riders, looks like, in the finish, although we can see a number of riders just a number of metres behind those 3 leaders.
Well, in a flat-out sprint, I'd favour Ardilia in this circumstance. Pereiro is very strong, but Ardilia's got more zip. He's in the wheel of Pereiro. He's still got about 300 metres to go. Sanchez just lurking there. Certainly not a sprinter. Oh, he's gone from a long way out as Ardilia. He's gone to the front from a long, long way. He's got about 200 metres or so to go. Ardilia still on the front. And it's Oscar Sevilla that's coming back at them. Ardilia. Oh, he's missed the line. Ardilia's thought he's finished. He's got the wrong banner. And Ardilia sat up, thought he'd won, and he's got in the wrong position. Samuel Sanchez has taken advantage. Pereiro also got a bit hoodwinked by that. I don't believe it. Samuel Sanchez comes from behind with Mauricio Ardilia convinced he'd won, and Pereiro just being caught by the fact that Ardilia had thrown his hands up in the air thinking he'd won. He lost it. He threw it away because he got the wrong banner. They were still 150 metres from the end. Well, I never. Juan Horach coming over the line now. Pablo Lastras is the rider behind. It blew apart on the last climb, which is a nasty little third category dig. Mauricio Ardilia went with about 350 metres to go and then suddenly threw his arms up in the air thinking he'd won the stage.
Yes, and there is a banner there, as you can see, just before they come on that little final corner. There's a banner just overhead, and he just got it wrong with that, and we could see there was no line there, but he put his hands up. He thought that was the exact finish.
Oh dear. Well, what can you say? I mean, there's a banner there, but come on, the commentary boxes aren't there, the crowd isn't there, the line isn't on the road there, it doesn't say finish. It's not as if he's got an excuse. He speaks Spanish, for goodness sake. He's a Colombian.
Yes, but speaking Spanish doesn't help in that situation.
Yeah, but you've got it written over the top, sure.
Well, if you're on the limit there on the climb, of course, and we see that they were really attacking each other, and they really went for the last 2 or 3 kilometres, and you see the banner overhead, and sometimes you can get it wrong. It's not the first time we've seen riders, and he definitely he got it totally wrong. But surprising that he did not see that the line. Normally, when you're sprinting, you would just see the line in front of you, but he certainly, you know, got it all wrong, because he was sure that he had to stake in the stage victory.
Absolutely, and it caught Pereiro out as well, didn't he? Because Ardilia threw his hands up in the air. Pereiro, I suppose, it's the instinctive reaction, isn't it? You stop, you stop sprinting. Your pressure comes off your pedals because you think that's it. But Samuel Sanchez, just behind the two of them, had the presence of mind. Maybe he just had that extra 2 meters behind them, and could see that it wasn't the finish line, and just put his head down and still went. Pereiro given up by this point, thinking, oh, what a waste. Ardilia had given up, and Sanchez just rides away to victory today on stage 13. Well, not the way I would have thought Samuel Sanchez to have won, but nevertheless, a good victory for him. It's been a long time coming for Sanchez, and the Basque team will be very pleased indeed. Victories in the last week for Roberto Laiseca and for Samuel Sanchez. Well, I don't think that was Danielson coming. It might have been. The group's starting to just filter over the line now. Still Eladio Jimenez, he's really spinning those pedals around. Right at the top left-hand side of your picture. Then Carlos Sastre is the next camera we have. As the gradient flattens out a bit, he's trying to pile on a bit more pressure. Bottom left-hand side, you can see Scarponi just sitting in there, doing the pace work. Menchov is right on the wheel. All the other big climbers are in there as well, except for Francisco Mancebo, who is suffering today. Now, interestingly, talking to the Liberty Seguros boys before this stage today, Roberto was telling us that it isn't actually Sastre or Menchov or Garcia Quesada or anybody else that he fears. It's actually Mancebo he fears on this climb, so that's good news for him. 11 seconds of a gap. It's not very much, Sean. He needs to do a little bit more than that if he wants to make an impression today. He's got just over a minute and 6 back to, or from Heras to Sastre. Joaquin Rodriguez done his job for the day, and Sastre still ploughing on past him. He's got to get a lot more of an advantage than 11 or 12 seconds, Sean.
Yes, well, of course, you know, he has to just keep working on it quite strongly now, and it's a long ways to the top, so you have to calculate your effort as well. You just cannot, you know, pull a big advantage out very, very quickly and then not being able to hold it. So Sastre, of course, he will have the experience, you know, from, you know, doing a lot of big tours, just to get out there and keep working and pull away slowly. And as there's so far to go, we see that they just went through the 9 kilometre mark for Eladio Jimenez, and you know, so it's a long ways and a lot of hard part of this climb to come yet.
Well, he's now beginning to pick up some of the remnants of the escape group. Bart Dox is being passed now, Bram de Groot, two of the lowlands riders who, or Dox can climb, front of the group, could climb as well, but not in the same class. Looking fairly strong is Carlos Sastre, but even if he's measuring his attempt up the road, Eladio Jimenez doing a lot of work on the front. Interesting that Iñigo Cuesta is not really losing track with him at all. I don't think there's much of an attack coming here at the moment, is there, Sean? They're just being paced because all the major climbers are in here and nobody seems to be under any particular pressure at the moment. We've seen Oscar Sevilla hasn't had a particularly good climbing time. He'd be trailed off, one of the first people to be trailed off. We've still got Perdiguero in here, who's a good climber but not a super climber. And we've got Gilberto Simoni in here as well. It's the first time we've actually seen him. So not necessarily a super fast pace yet and still ripe to be blown to bits.
Yes, well, I think it's caused a lot of damage at this pace because we see here there's only about maybe 10 riders in this group, and when you see the like of Manchego losing contact, although sometimes in the beginning of the climb he seemed to lose it a bit to get into the rhythm, and then he comes back later on, and he's the one that, you know, keeps working very hard, fights all the time, and he has that style, like, with, you know, the bit of a twist on the bike and just, you know, keep on at it, and I'd not be surprised if he, you know, could pull back some of the ground that he's lost. But, you know, we see there's you know, that top group, there's some good names missing from it, and I think the bottom part of this climb they hit it very, very hard. We see the Liberty Secures team riders, you know, charging into it very, very strongly. I think it put a lot of riders under pressure.
Ruben Plaza getting across to the lead group now. Plaza 7th this morning, 6 minutes down. He's having a good race. Well, you could physically understand the gap between the lead rider Eladio Jimenez and Carlos Sastre now. He's just passing that corner where we saw Cuesta and Jimenez about a minute or so ago. That's the rough time gap. Under the 9-kilometer banner to go then for the main group of protagonists here, and Ruben Plaza riding up to this group. Oh, that's Mancebo on a bad day today, and we haven't seen him in our shots at all since he lost contact with the Heras, Sevilla, Menchov group. 8K to go for Eladio Jimenez. Some consolation for him today. If he can get up to the top first, there's 30 points in the bag. It keeps his fight for the mountains classification jersey alive. It's interesting, isn't it, the different techniques they're employing, Sean. Joaquin Rodriguez taking as many points as he can early in the day. Eladio Jimenez thinking, well, I can get one big lot all at once.
We're getting news Manchego 13 seconds behind Heras. So he's, you know, he's still working on it quite well because he hasn't actually blown, because if he had, well, then he would be losing much more time than that. So 13 seconds, you know, he could rally around, and we've seen him do it before to come back, as I said. So we just have to wait and see. As we see Sastre here, you know, he's working at it quite well, and you know, going through everybody. That original breakaway, he's just going by them very, very quickly, and nobody even to latch onto his wheel.
Yeah, that was Penilla from Huesca-Lich's Compass. He's now coming up to Anthony Chateau of Bouygues Telecom. There's a little injection of pace just now. Oh, Roberto Heras has come across to the group as well. Well, I would suspect, Sean, I know he did a decent pace, but I would suspect then that Heras is just sitting there for the moment, or somebody else. They're not really giving it full bore because there are riders coming up from behind working their way back up here, and it's not the nicest of gradients to do that on, so maybe still some to come from the Liberty man.
Yes, well, I think you know, Lyseka, of course, we see him the other day. He finished very strong on that climb, and I think he's you know, in quite good shape, and not the best of riders to position himself in the bottom of the climb either. And maybe that was the problem, that he was a little bit far off, and, you know, gaps appeared, and he just found himself a little bit further back and trying to come back up now. Although he's, you know, struggling quite a bit, but we did see on the earlier shots there was other riders in Escatel. I think there was 2 of them already up there. So yeah, quite a, you know, quite a performance by that team if they have 3 up in this leading group. Well, very close. Yeah,
it's been blown apart though. Scarpone's gone off the front, and the pace has been injected because the 2 riders who've just got up to the back, Ruben Plaza and Roberto Heras, are having real trouble hanging on now. Still Carlos Sastre going past. That's Martin Elmiger, the Swiss champion. He's just going past. Well, Elmiger is going to have a go at hanging onto his wheel on this flatter section of the course. Let's just have a look at the climb today. It's a very, very difficult one. almost become legendary. In fact, one of our colleagues, Danny Nelson, rode this way back in the late 1990s, and he was talking to me saying that it's at some points it's so difficult. He rode it in 2 gears, 23 and 25 on the back sprocket, but it's so steep in some places. When you hang onto the top of the bars, you literally pull the front wheel off the ground. It goes so light, and you move you're moving your position on the saddle so much, so you have to be very, very careful. It's enormously steep at some point. Oscar Sevilla on the back of this group. The pace has definitely gone up a little. Scarponi off the back. Good to see Simone in there, Sean. We haven't seen him do anything so far in this Vuelta.
No, certainly not. He's been very quiet and hasn't showed himself at all. And to see him coming up here today, it tells us that he's coming back into shape. And I think you know, he's a rider that on the stage like today, if he's really going well, he could be a danger one.
This is the steepest part of the Covadonga today. La Rusera just under 14%. This is the bit that Danny Nelson was talking to me about, saying if you don't hang on to the hoods of your bars, you put your hands in the center of the bars, you can pull the front wheel off the ground. If you're that sort of rider, I think all of these are a little bit too much of pure climbers to do that. Eladio Jimenez going for the big one today, the stage win and 30 points in the bag, which would take him much, much closer to Joaquin Rodriguez in the mountains classification. But behind him, this man, Carlos Sastre, riding better again towards the end of the Vuelta, Sean, as he did last year. He's coming up behind. He's coming up behind Eladio Jimenez. This man riding himself in form. He's already ridden one big tour this year. And he did the same, exactly the same last year. Rode much stronger in the second half of the Vuelta. Well, they picked up Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano as Roberto Heras. This will be a last flourish for Gonzalez de Galdeano in this year's Vuelta. Today and tomorrow, maybe. He is retiring. Doing a fine job in pacing this man, Roberto Heras. Will his knee hold out, Sean, do you think? Doesn't seem to be bothering him too much at the moment.
No, certainly not, and I think the position now is perfect for Heras, because with Sastre up there, it's a bit of a carrot out there in front for him to try and get across. And of course Sastre, you know, one of the danger men, not an immediate danger for the moment, and but it helps that somebody up there in the general classroom will, you know, make him go that bit harder to get across to him. And as we see here, look, when he turns it on, Heras, he has, you know, still quite a lot of strength here left, so I think you know, but we see Menchov following quite well, and Simone there in the wheel also, so interesting to see him there to follow that acceleration by Heras.
Just the three of them then together now. Yeah, nice to see Gilberto Simoni looking fairly calm at the moment. Fantastic Asturian support for Eladio Jimenez. Carlos Sastre now behind, working so hard to try and take back time on Roberto Heras. He was 1 minute and 10 seconds down on Heras this morning. 1:57 back on Denis Menchov. He needs to launch a huge attack towards the top if he's going to take too much back. I don't think he's going to take enough back to really worry. Really worry Roberto Heras, as we're just coming over race radio now. 1 minute and 14 seconds down from Eladio Jimenez to Carlos Sastre. Gilberto Simoni maybe struggling a little bit to hang on. Nice multicolored Cannondale, we like that. Well, he's got back up to the wheel of Menchov again. Heras looks like he's working very hard though, Sean. I wonder if he's beginning to suffer.
Well, I think he's certainly suffering. Everybody is probably suffering on this one. You know, it's as you said, it's such a steep one, and but it's just who've got a little bit extra, you know, to make the difference. And we see Simone there. He just, you know, crawled his way back into the wheel of Menchov, but loses it once again. And when Heras, you know, just puts on that little bit of pressure, he's not able to follow it. And maybe he's also calculating Simone, because, you know, an experience would come into it here. Not try and follow the accelerations by Heras, and just, you know, keep your own pace, keep just on the limit, but not go over trying to follow Heras' acceleration.
It's interesting to see Heras though. He's sitting in that saddle, isn't he? He's sitting in that saddle. Beforehand, we'd have seen him in other climbs, getting up on the pedals, just dancing his way up a little bit. Of Menchov just sitting static, but I think his knee's playing him havoc today. He's having to sit in the saddle, unlike his normal riding style. It's ever so steep, this climb. You've ridden this climb, haven't you, Sean?
Yes, I've ridden it. I think it was in '87 was the last time I rode it, and it is one of the major climbs in the Tour of Spain. Very, very steep, and actually I did it some years before that as well, and the surface was much more rougher surface, and they covered all the surface. They put a tarmac heading on it, and it made it that much easier. Before that, it was unbelievable because the surface was very, very bumpy. But yes, one of the most difficult climbs in the Tour of Spain, if not the most difficult one, because the distance, of course, as well is, it's a long climb. When it's almost 14 kilometers from the bottom. It's a major one.
Roberto Heras has been saying for weeks upon weeks upon weeks that this is the most difficult stage for him or whoever wants to win the Vuelta a España. The Lagos de Covadonga today is the queen stage of this year's Vuelta. It really is the big one. And Heras wanted to do some real attacking here. Whoever wanted to win will have to win it on this. Well, maybe he might not win the Vuelta on this stage. It doesn't look like he's losing it at the moment either, Sean. He's still hanging in there, despite his cut and stitched knee. And Denis Menchov and he are, as they have been all the way through this Vuelta so far, locked together, wheel on wheel. Menchov still following. Do you think he'll launch a little bit of a dig towards the top of this, Sean? Do you think he has the strength to go past somebody like Roberto Heras? Is he weighing it up and seeing that he's a little bit more uncomfortable on the saddle than he expected to be?
Well, I think, yes, Menchov will be really, taking a big interest in Heras because of this problem he has with his knee, and if he feels that Heras is, suffering a bit and Menchov is on a really good day, well then we would not be surprised if he's trying, have a go at him. But I'd be surprised to see Menchov be able to do that, because he's, he's a follower really, and it wouldn't be, a greatest of climbers against Heras, for example. And even Heras a little bit, injured and a little bit of a handicap because of his knee, I think he will still cause these riders problems to stay in this wheel, and Menchov, I think, will be happy if he can stay with him today.
Great ride by this man, Elidio Jimenez. He's gone away from the escape route. He's been out all day. He has got a major advantage at 1 minute and 12 seconds over the pursuing Carlos Sastre. Iñigo Cuesta is sandwiched between the two of them, and I think Carlos Sastre is probably going to catch Cuesta by the top. Put yourself in Denis Menchov's shoes, or in Denis Menchov's saddle here, Sean. What would you be doing at this point if you were in this exact situation?
Well, first of all, the plan will be to stay with Heras and see what way he goes on the climb. And of course, they're quite a long ways out yet, and we see Heras on the first mountaintop finish. Like, he started making the tempo on the front, and then in the end, he just a number of sudden accelerations and put Menchov in problems just about a kilometre and a half. And that's what Heras is exactly trying to do here. He's just going to keep on making a very strong tempo, and then we'll try and accelerate a bit and try and blow Menchov off his wheel. But if Menchov is really in a good day and he feels Heras is not really up to it, well then he might have a go himself. You just never know what way he's feeling, and Menchov seems to be getting better as the race goes on.
Well, slowly but surely, I think, Sean, the gap that Sastre has managed to eke out is being taken back again by those three, Menchov, Heras and Gilberto Simoni. Great ride by Simoni. It's really nice to see him up there for a change. We haven't seen him at all in this year's Vuelta. He's kept very, very quiet indeed. Quiet in the press, quiet in his riding. And a man who's been on the podium so many times in the Giro d'Italia and a multiple winner of that Grand Tour, now making himself a little bit of a name in this year's Vuelta on the wheel of Denis Menchov. There's Roberto Heras is looking across the valley. He will be able to see Carlos Sastre up ahead. That knee doesn't seem to be affecting his tempo at all, Sean. He's not given it a huge attack yet, but great news for Heras that his knee is holding out.
Yes, it certainly seems to be
seems to be okay for the moment, and Heras is doing a very good job here. And you know, still 5 kilometres to go, so quite a lot of hard road to be climbed before they get to the finish, and a lot of time for, you know, Heras to do the damage if he's really got it, and if he can, you know, put in these sudden attacks, well then you know, it will cause certainly Simone and maybe Menchov problems to follow in his wheel.
Just coming over race radio, Francisco Mancebo now 50 seconds down on this group here, and well, I don't think that's much of a surprise, is it? Gilberto Simoni sitting in there and is now giving it an attack. Good on him, that's what I say, and a great little attack, little dig coming out. Heras, and he knows Heras and Menchov are more interested in each other than in Gilberto Simoni. He's way down on overall classification. He's now going to go charging up the road to go for a place. Can't try and catch Sastre. It's the two behind we've got to watch. But Mancebo only 50 seconds down. He never gives up, does he?
No, certainly not. Well, this is the day when he has to, you know, really fight all the way and limit his losses, because if he really lose quite a bit of time today, well then it's going to be, you know, difficult for him to get a place on the podium. And of course, if he stay, you know, in there with, you know, with a handful of seconds in the top 3, well then he could, you know, take a place on the podium. But surprising to see Simone going in the attack there, and because he knows that, you know, he's quite a bit down, I presume. You know, there's a minute and 40 was back to Sastre, and they are just about 10 or 12 seconds further back again. And Heras, surprisingly, that he did not go with Simone, because that would be the thing to do, to follow Simone immediately and see would Menchov crack and have difficulty following.
No threat in the overall. This is the gap back from Eladio Jimenez to Carlos Sastre, 151. Picking up riders as they go up. And Roberto Heras and Denis Menchov passing by Unai Osa. They're not that far down on Carlos Sastre, and I wonder if Gilberto Simoni has caught Sastre yet. 3 to go for Eladio Jimenez. Well, he's had 2 wins this year already for Comunitat Valenciana. Both Basque races. And the Euskal Bicicleta, which is the sort of tour of the, well, not the tour of the Basque country, but it's a local Basque race. Won a stage there, and also won the overall as well. So he's had a good season. The man from Salamanca. Real pressure coming on from Roberto Heras. Sean, this is the first time we've seen Denis Menchov out the saddle trying to stay with him. He's just keeping his pace at the same. So obviously the pressure coming on from Heras now.
Yes, well, certainly Heras is really turning it on here. We can see he was out of the saddle there, giving it, you know, a lot of effort, and Menchov, of course, you know, doing the same. And I think, you know, Menchov has really, you know, covered it well here. He's staying the wheel of Heras, and he's never, you know, allowed him to take any bit of distance at all. And that tells you that he must be quite comfortable, because if he was really on the limit, there'd be times when he would attack that you would see a bike length or 2 appearing between himself and Heras. But Jimenez, he's, you know, climbed this last climb unbelievably well, because Sastre, they're chasing, giving it everything, you know, and he's still holding off that 149, 150. So a great ride by him up front.
Fantastic ride by Eladio Jimenez. Great ride all the way through this Vuelta by Denis Menchov, the Rabobank rider in the leader's jersey there. Great courage and conviction by Roberto Heras, refusing to be bowed by his injuries, as some other sportsmen might be in other sports, I have to say. 15 stitches in that knee, and he's still ploughing on, turning on the pressure to try and shake Denis Menchov, but he's not managing to do so. Menchov responding to everything, and they're going to catch up to Gilberto Simoni again, I think, soon. Still up the road, Carlos Sastre, who launched the attack at the foot of today's climb up to Covadonga. Here in the Asturian Hills, we're in the Picos Europa. It's absolutely beautiful here, just a couple of spots of rain. Of course, when the Vuelta was back in the spring, Sean, if you'd have come to this place back in late April, early May, it could have been extremely cold and lashing with rain. It could have been a much different story.
Yes, well, certainly if you get the bad weather conditions and it's raining, well, then it gets quite cold up here. But this time of year, you know, the temperatures are still quite high. Although today and the last days we see here, you know, it's cooled down a lot. So it's probably the best conditions for the riders. A lot of riders, you know, would like this cooler conditions today, because if it was a really scorching a day here, it makes that much more difficult again.
The Vuelta changed to a September date back in the mid-1990s. Just listen to these crowds. There may not be many of them, but my goodness, they're vocal. Eladio Jimenez climbing so well today. He's hung onto the coattails of Joaquin Rodriguez all day. Picked up points in the mountains classification as they went along. Picked up points in the first 3 climbs of the day. This is what this man is after, the glory of a stage win and extra points in the mountains competition. He had a couple of bad days where he lost out to Joaquin Rodriguez of Sonia Deval. Rodriguez took 30 points this morning in the first 3 climbs of the day, but it was Jimenez who was right behind him in 3 of the climbs, 3 out of 4 in fact. We've had today. This is the 5th climb of the day. Gilberto Simoni catching onto the wheel of Carlos Sastre. Sastre beginning to really suffer now. Well, I take it back about him riding stronger. Maybe he's not quite got there yet. Simoni on the back wheel. It won't be too long before you see the other 2. Look, they're right behind him, and I think they're going to make it back up to them pretty quickly. That'll be a morale blow for Carlos Sastre.
Well, it depends on Heras if he has you know, anything left in the tank. This is the moment where he's going to try and do something, and if he does go in the attack, well, then he could possibly catch those. But Sastre is still going quite well, and Simoni is, you know, coming very strong up the climb. We see him, the early part, he seemed to, you know, allow a gap to appear between himself and Heras and Menchov, but I think that was, you know, all that was the tactic he was working, and not trying to follow the sudden acceleration by Heras, because he's, you know, in very good shape here, able to come across to Sastre. That tells you like he's still got very good legs and a lot of strength left.
Very good legs indeed. He looks very calm and collected. 1 kilometer to go then for this man, Eladio Jimenez, born in Salamanca. He's a tall, rangy rider for a climber. Won 2 races already this year for UCI points. The Euskal Bicicleta. Won the overall and a stage back in June as he was coming into form. He's ridden an awful lot of races in Spain this year. Castilla y León, Vuelta a Catalunya, and the Vuelta a Asturias. He knows all about these climbs. Here he comes, Eladio Jimenez, the man who wants to take back points on the mountains classification, and he gets a double whammy today. A wonderful ride by this man. He's going to take a solo victory up to probably the most difficult climb of this year's Vuelta. He went right at the bottom and shook off Iñigo Cuesta, who persisted with him for about 7 or 8 kilometers. Eladio Jimenez of Comunitat Valenciana is going to take victory today. He knows it. He's happy. Started his career way back in 1998 with Banesto. This rider has come to Comunitat Valenciana in the last couple of years and salutes the top of La Covadonga. What a great victory today for this man, Sean. He's done himself a power of good in the mountains competition, as well as a stage victory on the Queen stage today.
Yes, well, of course, the stage today, you know, one of the biggest stages, the most important stages in this Vuelta, and to win it the way he went out and done it, it looked like that, you know, everybody was going to be pulled back at that big break, but he just, you know, went off on the bottom slope of the climb and, you know, rode a magnificent climb, because we see with Sastre when he attacked also at around the same place as Jimenez did, and just wasn't able to take anything worth talking about him. Maybe, you know, a handful of seconds he took back, so a magnificent ride by him.
And a magnificent ride by this man as well. Iñigo Cuesta, he's been out all day in the break, couldn't hang on to the jersey of the winner today, but still coming in with a very, very creditable second place, just about a minute behind from Eladio Jimenez to Iñigo Cuesta. So a Spanish 1-2 today at the top of La Covadonga. Will it be a Spanish 1-2-3? Well, who knows? Gilberto Simoni looking in slightly better shape, I think, to me, than Carlos Sastre at this point. And look at this, Roberto Heras and Denis Menchov together. trying to come in behind Simone and Sastre. They almost went under the 1K banner together. Who's it going to be? It's Simone. He's going to upset the Spanish party. Third for the Italian. Then Carlos Sastre coming in, still limiting their losses. It's going to be Denis Menchov coming over in fifth, with Roberto Heras right on his wheel. Great climbing today by those two. Great stage by Roberto Heras, the injured man of the peloton. Sastre, I think, would have hoped for a little bit more than that, Sean.
Yes, I think you know, he was hoping to catch up all the breakaway riders, and you know, the stage victory would have been an important one for him, and also maybe to pull a bit more time out. But you know, he's still put in a great ride there, and to climb that all on his own ahead of Heras, because they were not hanging about.
Oh, tired Santi Gonzalez today, shaking his head as he goes over the line. Pedro Guerrero was his teammate just ahead, battling it out with Oscar Sevilla. Coming over for 6th, 7th and 8th. This is a man we really want to see the time gap, though. About a 1 minute and 15-second gap between Roberto Heras and himself. Bornai Osa over the top. Aitor Osa, by the way, did have a broken collarbone when he went down, brother. Unai finishing. Look at the view across the Asturian hills into the Picos Europa. That's absolutely wonderful view. Penilla coming over the top for Huescatal, and Francisco Mancebo losing time today. Roberto Laiseca, winner the other day on the last big mountain stage, coming over. Just a shade under 3.5 minutes down on the winner today, Eladio Jimenez. Ruben Plaza coming over as well. Plaza looks absolutely done in, Sean. He's really tried his heart out today, hasn't he?
Yes, well, everybody here, I think, you know, is really going to, anybody, I think, in the top, you know, 30 riders are really going to give it everything here. And of course, you know, this finish here, it's, you know, we can't really get a picture, but it's very steep, that final ramp.
Danielson coming over just in front of Oscar Pereiro, some 3 minutes and 50 seconds back. Still riding a very good race.